I'll never forget the day I heard Ada scream. We were outside, just us kids, playing hide and seek in the tall grass behind her house. Her dad's friend, Uncle Jide, was sitting on the porch. He'd been around a lot lately, always laughing loudly and calling us his little soldiers, but I didn't like him. Something about his eyes, the way they watched too much, made me uneasy. That day, Ada's scream cut through everything. It was sharp and filled with something I couldn't understand then, but now I know it was terror. We all stopped playing and ran toward the house. The door was closed, and we were too scared to go inside, so we waited outside calling her name. When Ada finally came out, her face was pale and her eyes were wet, like she'd been crying. Uncle Jide followed her, his voice too cheerful. "It's nothing," he said, patting her head like she was a little girl. "She just got scared of a cockroach." None of us believed him, but what could we do? We were just kids. Ada didn't say anything, not at first. She just stood there, silent and shaking. Later that night, she told me, we were sitting on the mat outside watching the moonlight dance on the ground. She whispered it like it was a secret too big for the world to hold. Uncle Jide had touched her. He told her to keep quiet, that no one would believe her anyway. I told her we had to tell someone, but Ada shook her head. "They won't believe me. They'll say I'm lying, just trying to cause trouble." She was right. When she finally told her parents, they didn't believe her. Her dad's anger was loud and hot, not at Uncle Jide, but at her. "How dare you say such a thing?" he shouted. "Jide is like a brother to me. You think he'd do something so wicked?" Her mother's silence was worse. She just sat there looking at Ada with something between disbelief and shame. "You must have misunderstood," she said finally. "You're too young to understand these things." Ada stopped talking about it after that. She stopped playing too. She'd sit alone, quiet and withdrawn, her laughter gone. Uncle Jede kept coming around, acting like nothing had happened, and everyone treated him like he was some kind of saint. I wanted to help her, but I was too scared. What could I do? I was just a kid too, but I watched and I listened, and I never forgot. Years later, after Uncle Jade had moved away and Ada had grown up, the truth came out. Ada told her story again, this time to someone who believed her. She said she couldn't keep it inside anymore, that it was eating her alive. It happened during a town meeting where Ada stood up to speak. Her voice trembled at first, but as she went on, it grew stronger. She described everything in detail, how Uncle Jide would isolate her, his threats, and the pain she carried for years. This time people listened. The weight of her words silenced the room. An elder stood up and said, "This is a lesson for all of us. We failed Ada. We must do better for our children." Others murmured in agreement, and some even apologized to her. It wasn't enough to undo the damage, but it was a start. Ada became an advocate, speaking in schools and community centers about abuse and the importance of listening to children. She told parents to pay attention to the little things, changes in behavior, sudden silence, or fear around certain people. Children rarely lie about things like this, she said. If they trust you enough to tell you, believe them. Looking back, I've thought about what I could have done differently. Maybe I could have told an adult I trusted or found a way to make them see the truth. But I've learned that silence helps no one. When we stay quiet, we let the wrong people win. Now, when I hear a child scream, I don't wait. I go. I listen. I believe. That's the lesson Ada taught me, and it's one I'll carry with me forever. The story of Ada's scream isn't just hers. It's a story of courage, of fighting to be heard, and of the power of breaking silence. And it's a reminder to all of us that the truth will always find a way, but only if we're brave enough to listen.